Hello, algebra students. Want to go over our next lesson with you. I'm glad some of you are emailing me and sending me your answers to your skill checks. Just keep doing that so I can make sure that you're understanding it correctly. Okay, so keep up the good work. And those of you I haven't heard from, I'd really like you to do that for me so I know how you're doing. Okay. All right, today we're going to go over lesson 6.6. We're going to be solving more equations. Okay, so the first example I want to go over with you is on the board here. X plus 4/9 is equal to 1/3. Okay, now when you're solving an equation with a variable, if you remember, I've taught you that it's our goal to get our variable on this side of the equation by itself. So we want to get rid of our 4/9. So how we would do that, we'll put x plus 4/9, and to get rid of 4/9, because it's added, we need to subtract it. Okay? And if you remember what we do to one side of the equation, we've also got to do to the other side of the equation. So if I subtracted 4/9 from this side, I've got to also subtract 4/9 from the other side. Okay? All right, 4/9 minus 4/9 would be 0. So we've gotten rid of that. Now all we have is our x. So our x is on the left side by itself. Now, we've got to subtract 1/3 minus 4/9. But we need to write it this way because if you remember, we have got to have the same denominator before we subtract any fractions. Okay, so we've got to find our least common denominator, and our least common denominator of 3 and 9 will be 9. Okay, so 1/3 equals something over 9. Okay, and so 3 times 3 is 9, so 1 times 3 is 3. This one already had a denominator of 9, so all we're going to do is write that over again. And now we can subtract. You say, well, Miss Thompson, if we have 3/9, we can't take away 4/9. Well, then that means we're going to have a negative answer because there's no whole number to borrow from. So 4 minus 3 would be 1/9. And because it was a positive 3 minus 4, it had to be a negative answer. So a negative 1/9. Okay? So that's one example for you. And you may need to watch that over again. Because I went through it a little quickly. All right, let's look at this one. 5/6x equals 7. Okay, our goal again is to get the x on this side of the equation by itself, which, since we have a fraction here, we could multiply that fraction by its reciprocal, which would be 6/5. You say, what's a reciprocal? Remember, that's when you flip the fraction upside down. So we flipped it upside down to 6/5, and if we multiplied that out, 6 times 5 is 30 over 5 times 6 is 30. So it would be 30/30ths, which would equal 1 whole, which would eliminate this side because it would end up being 1 whole, which would mean 1x. Okay? But now, since we multiplied this side by the reciprocal, we've got to do the same thing over here. We've got to multiply it by 6/5. Okay, and if you remember, if you're going to multiply a whole number and a fraction, that whole number has to have a 1 under it. Okay, and then we can multiply it by our 6/5. So 6 times 7 is 42. 1 times 5 is 5. So there's your answer. Okay, and you don't have to reduce that. Now, if you wanted to reduce it, that would be fine. Okay, all right, let's do another one. Give you a sample of some different kinds of equations here. All right, here we have x minus 2.45 equals 8.1. Okay? Again, our goal is to get x on this side by itself. Okay? And so here we're subtracting the 2.45. So we're going to have to do the opposite of that. if we're subtracting 2.45, to get rid of it, we're going to have to add it, okay, the 2.45. And so if we added 2.45 to this side, we're going to have to do the same thing over here, okay? So 8.1 plus 2.45. All right? Okay, and this will cancel each other out and give us 0. So we've got our x. And now, to figure this out, we're going to write it going down, 2.45 plus 8.1. Just a reminder, when you are, let's get it lined up a little better here. When you are adding or subtracting fractions, your decimal point has to stay lined up. Okay? So now we'll add. So 10.55 would be your answer. Okay? All right. Let's do one more. Okay, this one's going to be with decimals, but we're going to be doing something different. 0.15x equals 52.5. Okay, just a reminder, our goal is to get the x on this side of the equation all by itself. Okay, now this was 0.15 times x, so the opposite of times, the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So we would be dividing that by 0.15. And 0.15 divided by 0.15 would be 1, which would just leave us with our x, 1x. Okay, we've also got to take that and divide 0.15 on the other side. Because remember our rules, whatever you do to one side of the equation, you've got to do to the other side. So here we have 52.5 divided by 0.15. Now, if you remember correctly, we have to have our divisor as a whole number. And to make this a whole number, we're going to have to take our decimal point 2 places to the right. And so if we did that to this side, we've also got to do it over here. 1, 2. Okay? So there's our, where we're going to put our decimal point. Okay? Now we just go ahead and we multiply that out. So we have 15 times 3 is 45. Okay, and then let's bring down our 5. Okay, 15 goes into 75 5 times, which would be 75. Subtract, we get 0. We've got one more 0 to bring down. 15 cannot go into 0, so we're going to have to put our 0 there. So that answer would be 350. Okay? All right, again, send me the answers to your skill check to make sure that you're understanding it before you do the rest of your assignment, okay? Hope you have a very blessed day.